I'm going to show you how I went from living in a third world country, barely having food to eat, to now living in one of the best cities in the world, building a multi-million-dollar businesses, serving brands across the globe, with brands making anywhere from $3 to north of $5 million a year. Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Frank Kenny. So I actually grew up in a country called Cameroon, west of Africa, right? So I lived there with my mom and my brother until I was about like 10 years old before we came into the US. Now, growing up in a third world country is not easy, I will tell you. It is not easy because it's not like things that we have in the States. You know, like everything there is like very old school. Like even banks is almost like this ancient thing, right? So you didn't have a lot of that when I was growing up. So food wasn't always accessible, right? And you had to work every single day to at least have some form of money to buy food, right? So a lot of how I would, make money was to like sell things in the market. So I would sell like water bottles, I would sell like avocados, and I would also like help my mom sell fish in the market. So that's how we would bring money to where we can like obviously like pay rent and like, be able to like afford things, afford school and afford like food to eat, right? So it was very hard. But see, luckily my dad, we kind of have this like very similar spirit to where like we want to be successful. So prior to us even coming over here to the US, he came to the US prior to us. So I think he came in the US in 1995 or in 2000, in which we later came 5 years later. So he came to essentially set the foundation, to get everything established because he wanted a future for us, for his kids. And so in 2005, that's when, we came to the US, right? And coming to the US, again, it was another struggle because now I'm having to learn a new language, learn a new culture and things within that scope. So like that's like we went from one challenge to then a different challenge, having to adapt to a new ecosystem, to a new world, right? Obviously it was better, but there was still an adaptation phase in which we had to go through, like a lot of foreigners that come to the US have to go through. Right, so that was my same process. I think I started like in the 5th grade over here. I had to learn English. My English was terrible. Couldn't put words like how I'm articulating myself right now. I couldn't do that. Like I couldn't do that. Nor did I think that I would ever be able to do that. But as you practice something, you learn the more you do the very single thing that you obviously want to get good at. So I went to school, 5th grade, through middle school, started playing soccer because that was always like my passion. And back then, my goal was to be a professional soccer player, right? And so that's when I was like in middle school, it's like, okay, I'm going to be a professional soccer player, so I have to get really good. And my brother also played soccer as well. Like that was both of our dream, right? And so went through middle school, played soccer, went through high school, we played soccer. And my brother later went on to college. He went to go play for, D1 colleges. And that's kind of like the path that I was also following. So right after college, I also went to go play, also got a scholarship to go play at college, but it wasn't like a D1, right? It wasn't a D1. So I went to a school, it was called Heartland in Illinois. And so that's actually how I landed in Illinois. So went to the school over there, played for about like 2.5 years before I realized like, dang, I don't think I'm going to be able to go play professional soccer. So I had to start thinking of a backup plan. Like, how else am I going to become wealthy? How else am I going to make my parents proud of me, right? How else am I going to generate an income how else am I going to just stay away from poverty? Because I've already lived that life and I didn't want to live that again. So my goal was always like, how do we make a lot of money? How do we become rich? How do we become wealthy, right? And the gateway that I thought was going to get me there, which was soccer, was no longer a thing for me. So I had to think about like other ways to do that, right? And so in like an African household, your parents always want you to do good, right? They want you to aspire to, to do good things, whether that's being a doctor, being an engineer, or being, like into like a lawyer, right? And the path that I took was to be an engineer, right? Because I had a lot of interest in engineering because I like building things. As we'll get to the things that I'm building now, I like building things, right? And I like, using my hands to craft things together. I like to deconstruct and to put things back together. And so that was why engineering initially that was initially the path that I took, right? So I went after I cut my career. I ended my boots or ended my career with soccer at the college that I was going to. I'm like, now I need to focus on like my education actually, right? And so I transferred from Heartland to a university in which I was going to pursue an engineering technology degree, right? And that's actually what I went to school and graduated with. But within that period of time, I got more and more into entrepreneurship. I was exposed to the world of entrepreneurship, making money online, being wealthy, and things within that scope. So I actually started a few stores, dropshipping stores, and a lot of them was relative to fashion because I was very much into fashion during that time, and still is. So I started a dropshipping store selling like clothes. So basically, I would go on Alibaba, find clothes that I think would be like fit for the specific season that we're in. I'll add it to my store, and so when people would purchase it from my store, I'll contact the manufacturer would then ship it to the customer, right? That never really succeeded, right? Because one thing I learned from this, okay, how do you pick products? How do you put together like a store, build a store on Shopify? But then I didn't actually know how to scale, how to like do marketing to bring people into that store to grow that, right? So that failed. I went on to the next thing. And then I started another store, which was, this one was actually with a partner. I started another store with a friend of mine in college because he also had a very desire to be successful as well. So I told him about like drop shipping. I told him like, hey, I created a store before, but it didn't really work, but maybe you can help me build a new store. So we actually, instead of building a new store, we bought a store that already had like products inside of it. So it was a baby, like it was like a baby store to where like we would sell like baby clothes online for like newborns. That also didn't work well because we didn't really know marketing. He didn't know marketing. I didn't know marketing, right? So within all the businesses that failed, marketing was on the big thing. So I started another brand with my brother, right? So this one wasn't drop shipping. So this one was like, we were actually building a brand, Slooper, right? Something we've kind of took a pause on that now, but throughout college, after I feel like the other businesses failed, I started a new business with my brother and cousins. So this was the brand Slooper, in which we will design now. So the process is a little different. Like we would design clothes, right? And then pick the artifact, pick the material and everything like that. And then we had a manufacturer in China, some in Pakistan. We would send them our designs, send them our concepts, and then they will send us samples. And then if everything looked good, then we will purchase those in large bulk. And then we would start selling it, right? See, one thing we did different is like we didn't start a Shopify store right away. We would just sell it on Instagram because like Instagram was a very popular thing right now. That's how a lot of brand came up, through Instagram. So me being, like very creative on I was like very much into like social media during that time, but I was already doing like Snapchat. I was already like posting like my lifestyle on Snapchat, doing a lot of workout videos. And, I started to get more and more on Instagram. That's kind of how we started selling the products that we manufactured essentially. So we were selling on Instagram. People would DM us as we would post the product. So we'll do like photo shoots, we'll take the photos, videos, we'll post it online, and people would DM us to order. So that's how we started getting orders, right? And so I would do like pop-up shops at the school that I was going to, right? So focusing on my engineering technology degree, but on the side, I would build the business, I would build the brand. So we did a lot of pop-up shops to sell our products. So the products was actually very, it was a lot of people knew about the products throughout my college because of all these like different pop-up shows that I was doing. Right. And then eventually we decided to build a Shopify store. We started getting orders. We got a decent amount of revenue. Okay, we can afford to build a Shopify store and pay for like the monthly subscription on Shopify with like different apps. So we did that. We built a Shopify store and then we put our products on there. And then through the same method, instead of people sending a DM to like place an order, they would place an order online. Little by little, we started to make, money, but still we couldn't really scale that. We had a brand, right? But we couldn't scale because the only form of marketing that we were really doing was, yes, one, it was local. So like people just around like our college that knew me or attended like the pop-up shops that I was doing. But we had no method of scaling, right? Neither at that time did I understand like the concept of scaling. I didn't know about Facebook ads. I didn't know about Instagram ads or, Google ads. I didn't really know about that. So we were stuck again. So we were spending a lot of money out of our pocket because I was also doing like side jobs, like I was working for like Paxson, which is a clothing store. I worked for like the school as well, right? So I was doing like these little jobs. So obviously one, so I can like take care of like, paying for my living expenses, because I didn't really have a college. I didn't have the scholarship anymore while I was playing soccer, because I didn't play soccer anytime. So I had to pay things out of my pocket during that time. So I had like these little side jobs, which was obviously helping me stay afloat, pay for like living expenses. And I was also investing that into the brand, which is more in the manufacturing of the products, right? And so we were doing that, constantly investing into the business, but again, that didn't really go anywhere. So I decided to take a pause from that. And then I actually got introduced to other business opportunities. This was like network marketing, So I'm sure a lot of you guys that are watching this video may have had somebody do like a presentation, like, hey, you could get into like a network marketing selling like X specific products, right? So I very much got into that thing because the desire to be successful, I was just so hungry for that. So I got into network marketing. I think like the company, I don't think that this company is no longer alive today, but I think it was called like Dream World or DreamWorks, something in which we were selling vacations. We're selling vacations to people. And so I started to get very invested into that, right? And so we had like groups of friends that we were like doing this network marketing business, right? And with the goal of like, I just wanted to be successful. I wanted to make my family proud. I wanted to make my parents proud, right? And so I think, a lot of what I got from that business was we were attending a lot of workshops. We were traveling to the different events that this like network marketing business would host. So I attended a couple of those, and it was very eye-opening because I met people that were doing millions and millions of dollars a year, right? I'm like, you see, this is actually achievable. This is possible. This is something that I could do, right? So that's what I told myself. And so that's when I kind of started to get more into like personal development, because a lot of what they talked about is like, you gotta read, right? That's when I was introduced to the concept of, you're the average of the 5 people that you're around with, right? I started to get introduced in this concept. I started to get more and more into like personal development. I started to read books because, part of being successful is like, you have to continuously develop yourself. So I started to get into this mindset of, I gotta improve. I gotta constantly improve. I gotta develop like new skill set, et cetera, right? So we were doing that business, but it really never took off. One, I still didn't have all the skill set that I really needed to make this thing work. And a lot of this type of business is sales, being able to not only sell yourself, but like sell a product as well, right? I later understood that, but during that time, I didn't understand the concept of like selling yourself or selling like products, right? So this was during that time, like I was close to graduations, like I just needed to figure something out, right? Because I was at the point like this network marketing business wasn't really working, right? And I just needed to figure something out because I didn't want to go like do the 9 to 5, right? But graduation came, I still had not figured this thing out. I put the clothing brand business on pause, and then I was pursuing this thing, but it came to a point to where it's like I really couldn't do this anymore, so I had to go get a job. Because I then graduated with an engineering technology degree. I think this was either 2017 or 2018. I think that's one around when I graduated. So I'm like, now I'm working a 9 to 5. And I'm working as an engineer. It's not bad because as an engineer, you make a decent amount of income, right? Not a whole lot, but you're making money, right? So I was working at Caterpillar as an engineer, and it's like I hated it because the very thing that I was trying to avoid. So I had now graduated and working a 9 to 5 at Caterpillar. So during that time, I was trying to figure out what the next thing is, right? So I was still pursuing this like personal development. I was still reading a lot of books, and I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, like trying to find the next thing that I was going to try to jump into. So I came across a lot of, courses, people teaching about Facebook ads, right? And I think it was this particular individual, Jordan Platt. I still remember his name to this day. So I was still working the 9 to 5, working as an engineer at Caterpillar. So, and during that period of time, I was trying to find the next thing for me. And I was watching a lot of YouTube videos about like, personal development, watching like Tony Robbins, Dean. Dean as well was one of those people that I was watching. And then I came across, I started coming across these ads, people teaching about like Facebook ads. Jordan Platten was the individual that I remember. He was selling a Facebook ad course. I'm like, okay, this is interesting, because it was regards to marketing, so my thought was I need to learn about this new Facebook ads thing. So if I can understand that, then I can go back and make my clothing company work, because then I will know marketing and I can apply the marketing tools that I was learning from this course to the business. That was my idea. So I bought the course, I invested into the course, I also invested into the book that he was selling. And so I was just reading and just trying to get more acclimated to like Facebook ads. And then it hit, I was like, wow, this is what I need to scale, right? Because with Facebook ads, you have a product, you can target specific audiences, and you just put money into this thing, and then you run the ads, and then you get your return. You can target hundreds to thousands of people in a specific day. Like, it just clicked and it made sense for me. So I'm like, this is what I need to do. But the thing is, I didn't really have the money after I learned the skills to put into Facebook ads to grow the business. So another idea came to mind. It's like, I can actually start a business around this, to where I would then offer these services to businesses to help them grow their business through Facebook ads. And so that was when the agency got developed, to where I started an agency called Renaissance Media at that time. I invited 2 partners into it. And so we were building this thing now, right? So before I would go to work, because I was working in the night shift, we would wake up in the morning, we'll go to the gym, do what we needed to do, and then we would go door to door, different businesses, knocking on the door, trying to sell Facebook ad services, right? We do that for several months. We got a few clients doing that, but not to the point to where we could quit our jobs and just do this full time, right? So we did this for several months, right? We had a few clients, but it was tough getting clients, because then another thing is like, we didn't really know sales like that, right? And so we were doing this for several months. It started to get really frustrating. And so what actually happened was, I felt like I just needed more time to invest into this, because I was only doing this like part-time. Wake up in the morning, go to the gym, and then start doing door-to-door. And then have to go to work. So it wasn't really enough time to invest much into the business. And my partners will be doing the same thing as well. So decided then to quit my 9-to-5 job and say, I'm going to invest all my time and energy into this thing, so I can, kind of double the output of what we were doing from like going door to door. So I started doing that. We got a few more clients, but it still wasn't really enough to scale, right? And then boom, COVID hit. When COVID hit, everything shut down. Businesses shut down. And so we then couldn't really do anything, because a lot of the businesses were shutting down. And so a lot of the clients that we were serving was like restaurant, dentists. And so if they were shut down, they could really get any businesses. So like, we were just kind of stuck, right? And during that time, because I didn't have my job anymore, so I didn't have a lot of money coming in to pay for rent. And so I got evicted from my apartment. So I'm like, I don't have a job, right? Barely any money coming in, and I don't have a place to stay because I got evicted from my apartment during that time. And so I was lucky, because my brother, he was working a full-time job, and he had an apartment in the suburbs of Chicago, which was actually in Berwyn. And he said, hey, you can actually come in and move in with me until you figure out what you need to do. I was blessed with the opportunity, because one thing I didn't want to do was go back home to Michigan and to live with my parents, right? So I moved in with my brother. This was during like COVID. I moved in with him. And so I decided I need to just get more skills. I need to get more skills and just learn more about Facebook ads, learn about sales, so I can make this business work. So I lived with him for about like a year or so, still working on personal development. And during that time, even to make money, I had to do like DoorDash, right? I think, DoorDash is one of those things that I was doing during that time just to make money, right? And so I did DoorDash, and then when I was doing DoorDash, I was investing my time and energy just learning. I started to read more and more books. I would buy books like literally every week. I would just read and just learn to just develop my mind, develop new skill set, right? And so it was around this time, my brother then decided hey, I need to move, right? He bought a house, then he decided to move into the house. And so I was essentially kind of stuck in that apartment. And then I told my business partner to come and move in with me so we can further continue to invest into this, right? It was tough again, because we really didn't have much clients coming in. And so what we actually decided to do, which was actually a smart decision, was like, hey, why don't we go get a job at other agencies and learn their strategy, their tactics and framework that they use, and with the goal of just bringing back into the business and applying what we're learning into their agency, into our agency, right? So that was the goal. Actually, all our partners, we actually did that during that time, right? So we all got jobs at other agencies, and we were just learning and try to really invest that back in the knowledge back into the business, right? So the thing that happened was, as you start to see money coming in from like your 9 to 5, you kind of get demotivated to invest into the business because, you've been going for several months, years with barely any money. But once you start seeing money, you're like, man, I can actually start to live good now. I can go out, do all these different type of things. And that's kind of actually what happened with my partners. So instead of like really investing too much into the business, they were kind of like, because they had money coming in, they were like, kind of trying to do all these other things. While my goal, I still had the vision in my mind, like, I want to make this thing good because I don't want to be working a 9 to 5 for that long. So I just kept investing into as much as I could into the business while learning skills from the other agencies that I was working on. So the first agency that I got hired by was I think it was like Social Nucleus. There was a company in the Manchester United. Yeah, it was a company in Manchester, and they actually were trying to come into the US. And so I was one of the first hired in the US. I already knew about Facebook ads where I could sell myself to other agencies. Like, hey, I know this platform. And so this was actually an e-commerce agency, right? And while we were mainly focused with our agency, we were mainly focused on like service-based business, like restaurants, dentists, and, all those like smaller businesses. And so because we had a model for that, we had a framework that worked to some extent, right? And so working with our agency, I got introduced into e-commerce. I'm like, wow, this is so much easier than doing service-based business because like you can literally track everything. You have a product, you have an ad, you sell the product, somebody buys the product, then the ads tracks which, you can literally track everything from the ad to the audience that bought it to like the revenue. Like you could track everything end to end. So I'm like, this is just so much easier. So I started to get more and more invested into it. And so now I'm like, this is a service that we want to start introducing within the agency that we were managing at the time, right? So it was around that time when my partners, things just weren't working out. So we decided to close the business, right? And during that time, I'm like, okay, cool. What I'm actually going to do is kind of like, I'm going to move, right? I'm going to move to put myself in a better position to where I can now focus more on myself and focus on the business. So I then decided to move into the city. So I moved to the city of Chicago, and I was now, we closed out that business, and then I started a new company called Lion Media. This is the agency that I'm managing now full time with a team. So while I was still at that agency that I was at, that agency actually got bought out by Hawk Media. Hawk Media is literally one of the biggest performance marketing agency here in the US. So I got hired in that company. It was like all fast paced, getting accounts, like new accounts every week. And so I was getting so overwhelmed within that agency to where I couldn't invest time into my agency because there was just so much going on, new accounts every single week. And, it was good, but I didn't actually see in that time because I was getting so much knowledge, so much experience, like literally spending so much money on Facebook ads and just learning, which is exactly what I needed. So I ended up doing that for 2 years and getting all this experience working with all these big brands, right? And then what happened was like, I'm like, I actually need to, make a strategy. Like, I need to like leave that agency and go back and invest into my agency, right? But actually what happened was another agency reached out to me because they saw, hey, you're working with this pretty big agency and you actually have a lot of experience. Why don't you come work with our agency and we'll just pay you more, right? So I started chasing the money now and during that time period. I was chasing the money that I was being offered by these other agencies because of my experience now, right? So I took that offer, right? And I started working with Common Thread Collective, which is another big agency here in which they work with massive brands like Nike, 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 Skull Candy, Sunday Red, and Liquid Death. Those are all accounts that I was working on. You imagine these massive e-commerce giants who, when they're spending millions of dollars a month, which I was managing. So you can imagine within a year of doing that, I've just got soaked up so much experience, right? I'm like, I know how to make this thing work, right now. I wasn't gonna go and start, I wasn't gonna like stop that and go and like, work with these like same level of brands for my agency, right? So what I actually thought was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna take these strategies, but like, how can I apply this for like smaller brands? And so that's exactly what I did. So I actually then like quit that job and I started back full time within my company now, in which I already knew the strategies, right? All I just needed to do was now create content and work on marketing and sales to generate the content, because I now had the frameworks, I now had the experience, so I could easily sell myself to these brands. And within that too, I already knew a lot of the tactics that these agencies were doing to get clients. So I started applying that within my agency. And so little by little, more clients started to come in, and, more revenue started to come in. And then, we just started to create more content, and then more brands started to reach out to us. And so, over time, we just got a collection of clients to where, we're taking them from like $50,000 a month to $3 million, $5 million a year, right? So we started to get that. We started to like build these brands, and we started to to post all these like these case studies online, and like more and more brands started reaching out to us, right? And so little by little, that's how I started to build this company, Lion Media, from obviously a kid living in a third world country, right? Barely having any food to eat, to coming to the US, having to learn English, right? To then trying to figure out my way. What am I going to do to be richer, to be wealthy? To now, okay, I found my vehicle. Let me really invest into this vehicle, which is performance marketing with the agency that I manage, Lion Media. And so now we're on this journey to where now I have a team and we're building the company, right? We're scaling e-commerce brand. We would take brands from where they're making anywhere from like $50,000 a month within their e-commerce store to making $3 to $5 million a year, because we've developed all these frameworks, and I learned all these frameworks for all the different agencies that I was working in, right? And so guys, that is my story, right? Now I'm on this point to where we're building this company, right? We're hiring more people, we're getting more clients, and we're scaling these clients because we have a framework, we have a methodology that works. And so more and more brands are coming to us to work with, for us to apply our methodology within their businesses, guys. And so guys, that is the story. That is the story, and we're just continuing to build this thing, guys. If you're new to this channel, if you've never seen me before, again, my name is Frank Kenny. I'm the head of growth and CEO here at Lion Media, and just subscribe to the channel, follow my story, and then if you guys have any question, in terms of like how to do anything, just let me know regarding business and marketing. That is, let me know down in the comment section below, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.